Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, we are joined this time once again by the talented actress and director and writer of a really good romantic film called You and I. I call it a romantic comedy because there's nothing funny about the maturity of these characters and what they're going through. Um, but You and I is a this is a phenomenal film. I think a buddy of mine said it best when he reviewed the film. He said that there's a restrained maturity about these
Mhm.
characters, and I think that's the right word because you, Summer, play Sarah, a woman who's back in Tennessee for uh, you know for whatever reason she's there. She's a music producer, what we can gather, and she meets an old flame, Joseph, played by Clayne Crawford, who's a phenomenally talented actor.
Mhm.
And we get to explore their what if, their one that got away scenario. And what I loved about what you did here is you made both of these characters incredibly flawed, but so human. And that's something that's really hard to do when you're coming in cold to a film like this and you don't have all the backstory. How did you balance giving us new information while also kind of filling us in on the backstory without overloading us? Because you did a great job.
Oh, well, first, thank you so much for all those kind words. I feel like I should get you to travel with me everywhere and talk about the film. Thank you so much. It's interesting. I don't know that I would have been able to do that if I had the privilege to make a film, right out of the gate in my early 20s. I think there's something about going through life and at the time when I wrote the film, I had just turned 40, and with any age, whether woman, man, whatever, you know, I think there becomes a point in your life where you start to become a bit more reflective, and you can reflect on things without anger necessarily, but more of an objective eye, and trying to be more empathetic rather than judgmental. And, I'm not gonna lie, like I've had relationships in my past with some really lovely men, but sadly, the relationship didn't go so well. But that doesn't mean that either of us are any less of a person. And so I wanted to bring that to the screen in a way where, even still, if I were to cross path with them, you would still feel a little like walking on eggshells a little or tiptoeing around things. So I wanted to bring that into these scenes to when, Sarah, as she slowly starts to feel comfortable to finally broach the topic that they've been avoiding, you kind of just let it come out slowly. I wanted everything to be kind of like an onion peel where you're just slowly pulling things back. And because I just don't think it's natural right out of the gate to just be like, why'd you leave me that night? So it's a little bit of like, and also I think it's like a Southern, nuance as well to, you have your polite conversations, you have your, pleasantries, and then, when the time's right, you get down to brass tacks about things. And so I tried to do that in the film as well. And but I also wanted to make sure that the audience knew these people cared about each other.
I think you nailed that. And it's funny you mentioned that Southern attitude because it's clear from the start Joseph is a Southern gentleman.
Yes,
Right
he
from
is.
when Sarah gets out, when he picks up her bag, puts it in
Mhm.
her car, no questions asked.
Good
At the
question.
end, he does the same thing. And that's, I mean, I would ask why you picked Clayton, but he's also a good Southern gentleman and a fantastic actor. What went into picking that Clayton as the guy?
I mean, I hesitate to say that I picked him. I feel like just the world transpired and it was always him. I didn't really have anyone else in mind. So it's not like I was thinking about all these different wonderful actors. I had just been binge watching TV, and I'd watch old classic love stories too. So I would watch like David Lean, and I would see Trevor Howard and Splinter in the Grass and Warren Beatty. And there's something, about the old Hollywood men that has this very specific blend of masculinity and vulnerability. And there's something about that same time I discovered Rectify, where he played Teddy Talbot. And I think it was just all these things coming in the universe at once. And once I saw playing as Teddy, I was like, who is this guy? Like, he reminds me a lot of the Southern guys that I grew up with, but that show was older at the time. So I was like, where is he now? What does he look like? And I looked him up, and it was just at that time he had the killing of two lovers at Sundance, and I watched him in an interview talk about his role as a father. And he's very much a family man. It's his most important thing is his role as a father and husband. And I could tell that. So beyond whatever things he was on screen, the rough guy, the villain, what I call hood slides and handguns type of guy. To me, I saw so much more than that. Like I saw a very complex person that was still so vulnerable, even despite such a strong presence on screen. And that
I
was what I wanted to capture. Like I wanted someone on screen that no matter what, the audience would always understand why Sarah would fall for someone like that when she was younger, why she would always feel safe around them. Um, I did want there to have a bit of feeling of a slight age difference between them. And I'd been watching the Cold War, Powell Pawlowski's film,
mm,
and I love that. I rewatched so many scenes of that film before making You and I, and specifically there's scenes where the two couples are just walking down the street and there's a specific height difference between them, and there's just something that breeds into that physicality of these two people. And I didn't know Klain was as tall as he was.
I
He's
was
quite
just gonna mention that. He's
He's
six
quite
foot tall.
tall. He's
Yeah.
quite tall. So when I met him in person, I was like, whoa, like he had told me how tall he was, but it doesn't really click until you're like standing there in front of a human and you're like, whoa, here's the human. And so that just kind of worked out too, just visually in the frame. I wanted it to be something where his stature felt big and strong and protective around Sarah.
And I think you nailed it. There's a particular scene where he just sort of brushes your hair with his hand, and
Mhm.
he's coming down because he's like a foot taller than you,
Yeah.
and you can sense the sensitivity of his character as Joseph, but the almost like border like protector that he is. It was wonderfully done, and the way you put your camera there was super important because it's not a super close up shot, but it's just mid frame, and it's wonderfully done, and that's what breeds that sense of I guess what you would call sensuality between these two characters. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because that's one thing I wanted to ask you about was shooting those sensitive scenes, particularly toward the end of the film,
Mhm.
had to be kind of strange. It's always strange shooting those sort of things, but
Yeah.
we as the audience earned that. Do you know what I
Right.
mean? But I won't lie to you. We didn't deserve that ending. We did not deserve that ending. Okay. I have many things to say about this ending. Okay.
I'm happy to hear them. I love it.
How dare you? How dare you? I thought for sure we were going to get, because I'm a sucker that's always going to be like, we need a resolution. We need happily ever after. We don't get that, or
Mm-mm.
do we? And that's the problem.
Um, but do we? Maybe
That's
we
what
do.
I'm saying.
I mean, to me, love is a bittersweet thing, poignant and painful. And I hope that at the end of the film, I won't give any spoilers, that no matter what the audience see happen between these people, they know that no matter what, they're always going to love each other, and that they're always going to be in each other's life and spirits. And I did only, like I set out specifically, like I didn't want to tell like a traditional happily ever after love story, because that's just not what I know. It's not authentic to me. It's not what I've experienced. But I did want to tell a chapter in a story about two people whose love will never end. Um, and so that was my intention.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Mission accomplished. Despite my sadness at the fact that I did not get the ending I wanted, I thought that you gave us the ending that we deserved. We deserved it.
I
You
mean,
know.
yeah. Well, if it makes you feel any better, I toiled over it for a while, and there are some alt versions swinging around on a hard drive that we watched one time and, Clayton and I always knew, like, we knew what the ending would be. We're always very committed to it and everything, but I cut it one time and I said, "I hate to share this with you, but I'm going to," and I did, and he was like, "Damn it." It's pretty, like, oh,
I
tempting, but it's like, "You know what? No, let's go back to where our heart was."
Before we move on to our my two big questions I ask every
Yeah,
guest, I wanted to mention I hate comparing films to other films,
that's
but
okay.
here I have to. This reminded me a lot of Alex Lemon's film Blue Jay,
Yes.
and I love Blue Jay. So like I got a lot of that sensibility there. And obviously, you mentioned Cold War. Were these films that were in the back of your mind when you were making this? Because that honestly, Blue Jay is almost the West Coast version of this movie, where this is the Southern version.
Yeah, it's interesting you put it that way, and I don't mind being compared to other films at all. That's very flattering and honored. I mean, especially like, I mean, look at the cast of Blue Jay. I mean, Sarah Paulson and Mark Duplass. Like, please compare me. Go for it. But I watched. I'm trying to think. I know that a peer of mine, Rebecca Green, mentioned to me when I told her what I was interested in doing. She referred me to watch Blue Jay, and that's how I discovered it. And that definitely was on my radar. um, I did go back, I did watch some what I would consider two-handers, like Blue Jay, Like Crazy, Blue Valentine, kind of the indie of now. But most importantly, too, I went back and I watched, like I said, David Lean's films, Brief Encounter, Passionate Friends, um, Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. That was a big one for me with Chris Christopherson. I mean, talk about another one that's got the je ne sais quoi of plain spirit. Like you look at photos of like Chris Christopherson and Trevor Howard, and you put plain in there in the mugshot, you think like there's something in the Hollywood air that like breeds these type of leading men.
I actually
Um,
really like that like crazy comparison because if these characters were 20, like maybe 15 years younger, it would be like crazy. That's
yeah,
actually a really good pull too. So
yeah.
I'm glad you said that because if these characters were maybe 15 years younger, that's exactly what they would do and what they
And
would
it's
be.
funny when I was pitching it around, I was like, somewhere between like crazy and normal people, because that was just out on Hulu. Think about the time of period that's after like crazy and normal people, but I had discovered Andrew Hyde's 45 years, which destroyed my soul. And I
Yep.
discovered that in the edit. And I was like, somewhere between these two eras of relationships is you and I. So it was made for, the middle age person that has a past to look back on, that's made mistakes, that knows right from wrong, but also doesn't always have the luxury to pursue what they necessarily want in life, but they also want other things. Like sometimes your wants come in different packages and they're not always the same package. So it's just about what choices you make. And that's what I wanted, the maturity and complexity of these people's lives. I mean, he's a father. He's not going to like leave his child and move to New York. And, she's building her life. And, so those are real things that people go through.
And that's what I'm talking about when I mentioned the reality of the situation. It's such a personal story for you, so much so that your other two leads are your sister and her husband. Am I correct there?
We're not related.
What?
No, we just share the same last name. Yes, I'm
It's
very flattered.
crazy.
Yeah, a lot of people think so because the last name, but Ashley and Linz are two very talented actors in Knoxville who I happen to know prior to making You and I, because I had watched their one of their early films, Something Anything, by a beautiful film by Paul Harrell that they acted in together, and that's how I first became aware of their work. And then they have since done other projects, and including Lynn's was on Rectify, which is how I got the introduction to Claim.
That works. That's I
Yeah.
mean,
So we're
he
all
was the day
Southern.
one.
Yeah, we're
Yeah,
all Southern though. Everyone in the film is Southern. Charlotte, the dear musician, that's just a real pal that I was like, hey, will you have this Zoom call with me and roll with the scene? Because we're just chummy. So I knew it felt good. So yeah.
it worked out because it made that especially stuff like that little phone call makes everything feel more real, and
Yeah.
that worked out. I love that. So the two questions that we ask any guest that we get in front of us. The
Okay.
first one is real easy. Uh, who are some people whether that be in your personal life or professionally, that inspire you and move you to doing the things that you do? Because you've had a really good career. You've done a lot of production work and things like that. But this is different. When you're the head honcho, when you're the person behind the whole scene in front in charge of everything. As a first time director, it's got to be different. Who were some people that guided you on this journey or that inspired you on this journey?
Yeah, I mean, I'm blessed that guiding wise, I've developed some, mentors that I really respect and admire. Ann Carey is someone very near and dear to my heart, as a prolific producer who's always supported me and encouraged me. And, Lynette Howe Taylor is someone early on, she produced Blue Valentine that I reached out. I'd met her through the Sundance Producing Lab just to kind of get their feedback. Karen Chin is another female filmmaker. I've mentioned Rebecca Green. These are all like, core producing women that I have always turned to, whether it's for encouragement, empathy, whatever. So on a like professional level, those, and then to be quite honest with you, when I started thinking about whether I was going to make this film, I went and watched films where the creators were in them. So I watched like Katie Azelton's The Freebie.
Yeah,
And, even though all these are tonally different, I was just interested in like those women that were in front. So even like Tiny Furniture, The Freebie, watching those type things. And, that was interesting to me to look at how that was approached. Just honestly, to just see someone that's done it before and know, like, okay, I'm not crazy. It can be done. It can be done well. So, all these were people that definitely inspired me along the way. And, in personal life, I mean, my memories inspired me. I'm not going to lie. Part of where this came from was I had an old journal where I would write about the different men that I met and encountered throughout my life, some of which I met very briefly. Some had been in my life for several years, whether platonic, romantic, uh, wish they'd be situationships, whatever it is. And so those things, all those people inspired me, because despite no matter what I regretted happened between this or what didn't happen, I at least could remember what I took away. I remember how I felt. And that's what was so important to me in making this film, is being able to find a way to appropriately put feelings on a screen and hope that the audience would see like how these two people actually feel. Um, so I hope that answers your question a little
no,
bit.
that's perfect. It's funny. I watched your movie, and I always, since it happened one night's one of my favorite movies of all time. I always think about where is that Walls of Jericho moment. I don't know if
Mhm.
you've ever seen it happen one night, but I always think, where's that Walls of Jericho moment where it's going to come down? And something like your film reminded me a little bit of like In the Mood for Love, Wong Kar Wai's
Oh,
amazing movie,
oh my God.
where it's like
Thank you.
where it's like the two characters are sort of passing each other the whole freaking time, and you're like, just tear the wall of Jericho down, please, just do it. And when if it happens and when it happens, it's earned, and
Yeah.
that's where that comparison comes in.
I mean, Wong Kar-wai, I was too insecure to even say those words out loud to think that I could compare myself in any sentence to that. But In the Mood for Love was something that I definitely aspired in terms of the sensuality and the frame, just not being afraid. And honestly, Bridges of Madison County was a big one for me, like the way Clint Eastwood goes about it. And one of the biggest films that became the most common discussion points was, this is a pandemic film that Clayne and I talked about a lot, was The Octopus Teacher documentary.
Yeah, I've
Um,
seen it.
that was a big one for us because that's a love story. It's a
It
love
is.
story. And throughout the film, we could say, who's the octopus, who's the diver. And I just remember watching that film and remember how profound I felt the first time that that diver actually touched the octopus. And
Right?
and so when we were thinking about, okay, like when do we actually see Joseph and Sarah like touch for the first time? And how do you build that? And what is that like? And creating that kind of tension in those moments was important to me. So there's a few little Easter eggs in the film to the octopus teacher.
I love that. There's something to what you said about a director putting themselves in the movie. And see, it's funny you mentioned the freebie. The freebie is a very important film for my website. It was one of the first 5 or 10 movies that we ever reviewed ever.
Oh,
So the freebie
wow.
is a super important film for us. It helped us get started. And when I had me and my old partner who started the website way back in the day, he's not there anymore, but it was one of the first 5 or 10 movies. So the fact that you brought up Katie Allison's movie, and we've already talked about Mark Duplass, and the two of them are married, so it's really funny that
Yeah.
we go full circle there. The second question, this will
Mhm.
be the hardest question that you get asked on the day. If you
Okay.
had to choose 2 movies to watch for the rest of your life, what two and why?
2 movies to watch for the rest of my life,
And why?
and why? Oh my gosh. That is a very hard question.
Yes.
It's a very hard question. Well, I do feel like because you want something that's gonna make you feel the emotional gamut. You know, if I'm gonna have to watch something for the rest of my life, I wanna be able to go on the gamut. So I feel like, oh god. I mean, I don't think I would want, oh man. Maybe Bridges of Madison County, like, it's kind of a pleaser. It's like that perfect blend of sophisticated but real life. It's like a, you know, also, I feel like maybe I would could watch Cabaret.
Oh yeah,
You know, it's
yeah.
important. It makes you think. It has song, dance, powerful performances. It's
Liza
something.
Minnelli's killing it.
I mean, that's a film that definitely, like, that's one of the, you know, I didn't grow up around a ton of cinephiles or art or things, but my mom had a record of Liza with a Z. And so some of the first, 2 records I ever had or listened to over and over and over, one was Liza with a Z and the other one was, Al Green and Dr. John, 3 of them on
Hey,
rotation. Pretty good, like, I think pretty good sampling, like, if you're gonna grow up with 3 things that you have in your blood, Al Green, Dr. John, and Liza Minnelli, I mean, no wonder I am, a crazy cake. But, yeah, Cabaret would probably be interesting. I mean, I think there's a lot of life lessons in it, but there's also song and dance and laughter, tears, and then Bridges of Madison County, I think is just something that, I don't know. It's set in a rural place. I come from a rural place. It has the escapism, but it also is grounded in reality. Like, I know how Meryl Streep feels at the end of that movie when she's watching Robert Kincaid drive away in the truck in front of her on that rainy day. Like,
that's
that's
such a good movie.
it's heartbreaking.
It it
Heartbreaking.
it the way I explain movies like that is they're buttoned up sensuality.
Yeah, and that's what I hope to inspire that. Like, I would, think that I could do that. But I think those would be films that I could watch because sure, there are probably like 50 other criterion things I'd write, but some of them are pretty heavy and things. So I think that you do need some things that, make you laugh, make you cry. I feel like I would hate to go through life and not have all of those emotions.
Yeah, and I think that those are 2 movies that elicit very different emotions. So I think
Very
that's a
different
great
emotions.
answer. I think that's a great answer, honestly. Now, for the folks listening, when does this movie come out? Where can they find it if they need to? Because I'm looking at it here and I'm seeing that the movie's about ready to come out here. It's already out in a lot of other places.
December 3rd, it's gonna be out online. We just did our LA theatrical in New York and did a screening in my hometown, Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And so on December 3rd, it will be released online. So you'll have, Amazon, Fandango, Apple, Google Play, and I'm sure several others I'm forgetting.
Well, the good news is when our review comes out at the very bottom, they can just click the just watch link on our review, and they'll be able to click it and go right to the movie and watch it because
Oh, thank
they're a
you.
sponsor for our website. So
That's
make sure
cool.
you check it out. Make sure you check out You and I because it, like this interview, runs a gamut of emotions, all of which frustrated me up till the very end, which is a good thing. Is there anything else you want to leave the audience with, Summer, before I let you go? Besides the fact that I've spoken to Clay before and he's a wonderful dude.
He is. I mean, what better thing, like, he's a special person, and I feel, I went into this calling him a stranger, and I just hope that's something I don't ever have to call him again.
I love that. I love that. And guys, hopefully, whenever Clayton's not busy, we'll be able to get him on
Yeah.
again
Yeah,
and talk to him about the film.
he's a fun one to chat with. He's got a lot to say and a lot to worth hearing.
He's a high energy guy. We talked to him last time about the integrity of Joseph Chambers, which is another Robert Machillian film that he
Yeah,
did.
yeah. Maybe I'll plug, his, hard left in his comedy world. He has on Hulu coming up next year, Chad Powers, the whole,
Oh,
with Glenn Powell, the Elon Manning thing. So, it's his other favorite things, football, like football.
shouldn't have told me that because we're gonna have conversations when he gets on here about that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you'll have a full gamut of the Crawford experience, from romance to comedy. You can have double features.
Love that.
Maybe one
Thank.
day I'll be blessed enough to have I'll make something else and you can do a double feature of mine.
Hey, keep making stuff. We'll be here. We're not
Hey,
going
let's
anywhere.
manifest it. Let's just put it out in the air. That's how things happen. If you don't just put it out there, that's one thing I did learn on this film. If you want something done, speak it.
It's been spoken. You're gonna
Yeah.
make another movie, and it's gonna be just as good as this one, if not better.
Thank
Uh,
you.
and we're gonna get that done. Ladies and gentlemen, let's all thank Summer Shelton for being here. Summer, thank you so much.
Thank
Check out
you.
the movie, and yeah,